Sons of the times are moving faster.
When I was 15 years old, I wrote a letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations. I wanted him to do something about climate change. I told him about the problem in earnest, and probably suggested what I thought were some very good solutions. It was obvious, no? If someone senior enough only knew about a problem, they would act on it. I since learned that yes, the right information in the hands of the right people at the right time can and often does make a difference, but that it was much, much harder than it seemed. We live in a world that is data-rich, but decision-poor. The information often exists, but isn't working for those who need it. I want to walk you through why the problem is so hard and complex, why AI doesn't automatically solve it, and what we need to do to get it right. So I set out on a career path to get good data into the hands of people, starting, as it turns out, with information about garden furniture, then about coffee brands, then chocolate. But then I went back to my early love for the earth, and for the past 20 years or so, I have been working on climate change and the environment. But in every area I worked in, the problem was always the same. The information was hard to find, make sense of, or use. I need to buy a new washing machine. My old one sounds like it's about to take off to outer space any minute. So I need to decide what to buy. Which features do I need? Which brand to trust? Should I get another standalone or finally get that built-in and remodel half of my kitchen while I'm at it? And should I get that extended warranty, or is that just a scam? How do you decide when you need to face a decision like that? Do you ask your friends? Do you Google it? Do you use AI? Do you just buy the same thing like last time? Or are you like me, so overwhelmed by the need to decide that you just stay with the old one until it literally falls apart? What's at stake if we get it wrong? With notable exceptions, for most of us, most of the time, not much. We regret, we complain, but we course correct and we move on. The cost of misinformed or uninformed decisions is limited. But every day, all around the world, there are policy and finance decisions with huge, long-lasting impacts on people and planet. Decisions like which laws to pass, what to fund, what to ban, what to tax or subsidize and how much. And these decisions are rarely simple. Some of those decisions lock in physical systems like infrastructure or land use. A government in Southeast Asia wants to build solar farms to reduce its emissions, but the best place to do it on dense virgin rainforest. Some of those decisions lock in economic systems like incentives or investments. There are trade agreements that contain protections for existing oil and gas infrastructure. So companies wanting to transition away from fossil fuels face huge lawsuits. And there are decisions that lock in social outcomes. Off the shore of many countries, communities' fishing rights, building offshore wind farms, and protecting biodiversity are at odds with each other. So who benefits, who bears the risks, and whose livelihoods become more fragile? These decisions are not only urgent and big, they are also irreversible, or at least very expensive or slow to fix. Not that people don't try. In 2009, a group of enthusiastic parliamentarians from 16 countries across 4 continents decided to collaborate on making better laws to protect the climate by learning from each other's successes and mistakes. They understood that climate change was a global problem and that they needed everyone to get it right, and that there was no time to reinvent the wheel. The first thing they discovered was that they couldn't easily share information with each other because they didn't readily have it. Some of them didn't even know which laws their own governments had passed. So they commissioned the London School of Economics to write a small booklet listing all the climate laws they had between them. It was a pretty short list. I came onto that project as a research assistant on the sidelines of my PhD and ended up leading it for nearly a decade, building up the world's most comprehensive database of climate laws and policies. And the bigger that the database grew, the clearer it became that yes, collecting the laws and making them accessible was hugely helpful. Hundreds of thousands of people were using the database. But it solved only part of the problem. The problem was eventually not a shortage of information. While critical gaps remain, we've never had more data. So what was so difficult about putting it to use? Let's think about who needs these kind of data. The governments, the courts, the investors, and the companies who make those decisions. And the researchers, journalists, and activists who inform them, challenge them, and hold them to account. Each needing to know what the others have done, what has been tried, and what they shouldn't miss. Imagine that you are tasked with writing the climate plan for your city. Think of the reality of what it would take to collect and analyze and organize all of this information so you could come up with the best possible ideas. You would be faced with a giant pile of data, documents, laws, policies, plans, international commitments, finance reports, supply chain data, expert reports, more expert reports, long, dense, full of jargon. If you wanted to collect information, for example, about extreme heat, one of the most deadly consequences of climate change, you would find that in one document, it appears as heat waves, in another, urban heat island effect, in another, abnormal high temperatures. You cannot reliably find your way through the data. So what do city planners and others do? They do their best to work with what they have. Sometimes they guess. Sometimes they copy or adapt whatever they can get their hands on. Early on, I was working with a small government that was developing its first national climate plan. A senior official said, "Can you just tell me what the Scandinavians are doing on green building codes? They usually get it right." There was just one problem. The Scandinavians were heating their buildings. This government wanted to cool theirs, but the example was easy to reach for. So, what do we have? Is it ignorance? Is it recklessness? Probably neither. In most cases, it probably isn't even bad intentions. It's the path of least resistance. There are, of course, others who want to leave the situation as it is, and therefore have a material interest in keeping information where it is, buried, scattered, or hard to read. There are those who benefit from deceit or confusion. There's data that actively gets deleted because it no longer serves the narrative of a corporate or a government. So what do we have? Big, urgent decisions that are hard to undo, made by thousands of actors who are interdependent, who rarely see the whole picture, and who have their own incentives and interests and constraints. And we have a volume of messy data that is very hard to analyze. Surely you're thinking, AI changes all of that. It does, dramatically. The cost of exposing and connecting knowledge has collapsed. Vast amounts of text can be analyzed easily. Connections across documents, institutions, countries, and years can be found in seconds. You can get an answer to any question in any format. What was slow is now fast. Some things that were impossible are now possible. And it becomes smarter and faster every minute. But can we trust it with our most important decisions? How does AI choose its information sources? Ask it about a climate law somewhere, and it will give you an answer. What it will not tell you is if what it has found is a law that is in force, a plan that was announced on the campaign trail but never followed on, a blog post, or AI slop. Garbage in, garbage out. What about terminology and context? There are so many terms that carry precise legal or political meaning that a general-purpose AI system might flatten or miss entirely. Sure, it might know that heat waves and extreme heat are more or less the same thing, but it gets trickier if you ask it, for example, about fossil fuel subsidies. That is money that governments pay to keep oil, gas, and coal cheap. In some documents, it could appear as preferential fiscal treatment. In others, producer support. And some governments use none of those terms. Can you trust the system to understand the nuance? Research by the OECD concluded that AI systems that don't have domain knowledge grounding from the start are dangerous for high-stakes decisions. And in some cases, AI makes things worse. Every AI answer is full of hidden choices. Ask it what are the best laws in the world, and it will give you a definitive list, just weighted towards the countries with the most English language documentation, or citing reports that have their own normative constraints baked into them. You just don't know which ones up front. These systems are designed to be helpful, to sound authoritative. They are not trained to say, this question contains a values dispute that I cannot resolve for you. If you don't pay attention, you could be quietly stripped of agency. People often trust overconfident sounding answers. You ask for clarity, you get confidence. And misplaced confidence is dangerous. As my dad always says, it might not be the light at the end of the tunnel, but the headlights of the train speeding at you from the other direction. There are too many decision makers that are still in the dark, or potentially speeding towards that other train. The organization I founded 5 years ago, Climate Policy Radar, exists to close some of those gaps. It grew out of the Climate Laws Database project, but was designed to solve the harder problem, not just collecting the laws, but helping to make sense of them and make them easier to analyze and use. We bring together tens of thousands of documents, climate laws, policies, international commitments, court cases, through partnerships with universities, the United Nations, and government watchdogs, a curated, trusted set of sources. We machine read all the documents, we make them searchable and translated from every language. And we built in domain knowledge from the start, in collaboration with a wide network of experts. So when one document says shepherds, and another says refugees, our system knows that these are connected. Policies to protect communities from storms or floods need to take both of those groups into account. Every data point is traced back to a source document so that you can see for yourself. And there are no opinions. You don't have to trust the system. The machines do the heavy lifting, but the expertise and the judgment remains with the humans. We are deliberate about how we build. Rather than resource-hungry large language models, we use tiny language models that are built especially for this task, small, fast, and at a fraction of the environmental cost. Our data and tools are open and free, because while AI is getting cheap, cheap is not the same as free, and free is not the same as accessible. The people who are least able to pay are almost without exception the ones most vulnerable to climate change. Building in the open also means that others can extend and adapt our data and code. We can't do this alone. We were never going to. And so with this, the picture fills. Climate Policy Radar's tools and data today serve more than 1 million people, policymakers, researchers, financiers, and civil society organizations worldwide. This is only the beginning. Climate law and policy documents are just one layer. There are others building towards a shared vision. Climate Trace, a nonprofit coalition founded by Al Gore, can tell you exactly how much methane leaked from a specific oil field last Tuesday, not because someone reported it, but because a network of satellites is continuously watching, monitoring, and calculating. There are other organizations who are tracking the money, and others who are looking after whether corporate promises mean anything by the time they reach the factory floor. We're building the collective picture together. The laws, the emissions, the supply chain, the money. And we are starting to weave systematic connections between these data. When we have built these connections, then we will be able to see not only what others have legislated, but whether the money followed, whether the companies who are designing the solutions had a chance to succeed, whether the emissions fell, and whether the communities were protected. So more becomes possible every day. A government that is committed to phasing out fossil fuels now needs to put in the legislation to make it real. It needs to see what others have done, what legal mechanisms are in place, and what protections were designed for the workers and communities affected. Having access to that data can mean the difference between a law that is well designed and one that creates as many problems as it solves. Or a research organization in Nairobi or Lima that wants to check if the government's promises and commitments can be translated into credible plans can now do that. Or a lawyer who is building up a legal case against a corporate for greenwashing can now access the legal strategy that was used in another court, in another country, in another language. Previously, she would have not been able to do so. AI can help us immensely on this path. However, it is our civic responsibility to ask, where does AI stop short? What can't it do? What decisions has it made already on our behalf? This is not optional expertise for a specialist few. It is our collective responsibility. I don't know yet what my next washing machine will look like. The decision that will likely lead to that choice will be a small and simple one. I read that, I chose this, it worked, or it didn't. Now imagine what we hope for our collective future. The decisions that we need to get there, and the data and tools that we need in order to make those decisions. That future is not guaranteed, but it is, for the first time, within reach. Thank you very much.
Sounds like a thousand